favors their industries in ways that are wrong. They shouldn't be in there at all. The same thing happens with free trade agreements, right? You can argue about whether we should have free trade, but those agreements aren't that. They're a compilation of all the special interests that got to be at the table while they were writing. The same thing with this medical bill. It's a compilation of the self-interests of the corporations and the politicians and the bureaucrats who all got together to write this thing to tell us how to behave. It's not good. It's a bad system.
How do you get the control of the lobbyists for controlling most of this?
Yeah. You have to get, okay, the general problem is this, and the money in these things mostly rests with the U.S. Congress. The Senate has to vote, the President, the Congress originally votes it. If you look at the federal budget, each congressman controls about $10 billion a year. $400 million worth of lobbyists directed against Congress. So a guy sits in his office as a congressman. He's got $10 billion worth of public money on average. And he's got $1 million worth of lobbyists directed exactly at him. Okay, at him, because that's his share, right? There's $400 million. So he sits there, the lobbyist comes in, and he says, I want a favor. Now he can do two things. He can say, gee, I don't see in the Constitution where I should be giving you a favor. I'm sorry you wasted your time. Or he can say, oh yeah, what is it you'd like? And if they get together on a favor, $10,000 goes into his campaign coffers, and the lobbyist gets what he wants. You have to elect congressmen who will not make those deals. And what we got now is largely congressmen who do. On television, you're going to see all kinds of advertising in this campaign. $400,000 of it is transportation industry money that came because of deals made with our current congressman. So this thing where the people, the lobbyists come in, the congressman sits there and makes unconstitutional deals. You know, they've become very flagrant about it. I heard one politician talking about this, and I've heard this in many, because I've worked around these people, things I've done. They'll sit back, and most of them will tell you, well, my main job is to pick winners and pick losers. I pick winners and losers, which means he decides which lobbyists to favor and which ones not. That's a corrupt system. And you have to elect people in office who won't make the deal. That's the only way. Because, see, in the earliest parts of the country, we had mostly citizen legislators. So what happened was, somebody who worked and lived among them, some of his friends would go to him and say, it's your turn. You really ought to go up there and serve the Congress. Some of the guy's friends would go see him. And they get 2 or 3 candidates, and they'd have an election. Most of the people who went up there didn't even want to go really. They said, yeah, they had better things to do. So you had citizen legislators. They went for relatively brief periods of time, and they were selected because they had a lot of experience in the world and in common sense. We don't have that now. We have career politicians, and these guys go up there and they stay for decades, and they start to make decisions in their own self-interest instead of the public. And you have to not elect these people because they're going to make those deals. And my opponent's making plenty of those deals, but he's not alone. I'm not suggesting that he's some kind of special animal. A very large percentage of them are making those deals. And you have to get rid of them.
One of Obama's big planks in his program was that he was going to get rid of the lobbyists when he came to
that's just a joke.
That lasted 10 minutes.
Well, you know, my opponent votes with Pelosi 86% of the time, and that's an Obama vote, right? And he's pointing at the other 14%. But the whole system, let me tell you a story about a very conservative organization, all right? I won't name them because you'll hear the story. But after I got the nomination, I had a Republican nomination, and the Constitution Party nomination, and the Independent Party, and even the Libertarian nomination. It's an endorsement. But anyway, and the best bumper sticker in this campaign is Maryland Killed. It just says hippies and rednecks tonight. Because we got the same problem, all of us. We've got government intrusion in our affairs. Anyway, after I got the Republican nomination, I went to Washington for a few days to try to get some help. There's big organizations there that will help you in your campaign and so forth. I got help from Ron Paul, but most of the organizations weren't too interested in my philosophy. But one of them, I'm going to use an example, is a large conservative organization. If you were listening to the agenda, and most of the people here are probably relatively conservative, you would think they're on our side. So I went to see this organization, and I had a friend who happened to be on the board of directors, and he told them I was a good guy, so I was sort of generally, they knew I was sort of okay. So there's an interview. And the interviewer says to me, what do you think about earmarks? And I said, I won't vote for a bill with an earmark on it. Oh, he says, you're wrong. He says, you have to understand that this thing up here is like a football field. Anything that pushes the ball a little more our direction, you vote for it no matter how much garbage it's got on it. I haven't found a voter in this district who likes that. But that's the way they work. And that's one of our, we would say, friends. And they're playing this game. And earmarks, what do? They put a huge amount of funding for umpteen different things in one bill. They label it the Americanism, apple pie, and motherhood bill, so nobody can vote against this label. And then they stick thousands of earmarks on it. And then each of these guys takes that earmark, he goes back at election time, and puts his arm around some guy that's got $3 million for his business. Look at the jobs I brought to the district. The guy smiles, and everybody's supposed to vote for this guy because he did this wonderful thing. It's crooked. It is crooked. Because they should have one bill. Now, on the medical bill, okay? My opponent got $400 million for more money for Medicare doctors as the trade for his vote. That's what he said. He really voted because Pelosi needed his vote. It wasn't going to pass. But that's what he received as a trade. And Oregon gets about $25 million of that. It's split between 17 states. We also lost $6.5 billion in Medicare funds because they took $5.5 billion down Medicare. So it wasn't really a good trade. But let's ask about the PERT itself. He may well be right that the Medicare doctors need more money. A lot of people have the experience now. They have Medicare, they can't get a doctor to take it because he doesn't want any more of these patients, so they don't pay him. Suppose he's right. What he should have done is to introduce a bill to increase the payment to Medicare doctors. Not to go make some deal.
100% agree with that. What's the chance of that kind of a bill getting through Congress? Congress cannot operate on a single, unless we change the very basic rules of how they operate.
No, it's not the rules, it's the people. You elect congressmen with common sense, they won't do these things to you. Social Security, look at Social Security. It's supposed to be a deal. What it was supposed to be was we pay in, right? And then when we're old, they pay our money back to us. And we also made a social contract. The sort you might be thinking about the medical care. The social contract was that if you didn't have enough when you paid in, you'd still get a living wage with retirement. So there's a deal in there where everybody pays in, we get our money back, and also people who didn't earn very much also will be able to take care of it, right? That was a deal. What happened? Congress spent every cent of that on other stuff. And they had a surplus during most of the time of my opponent's term of office, and he happily spent it too. So now the young people are paying in, and their money is supposed to be saved for their retirement instead of being paid to the older people. Now there's a name for that. It's a Ponzi scheme.
Ponzi scheme.
Bernie Madoff is in prison because he did just that. Now, but what they tell you is, no, there's a trust fund. There's a trust fund. It'll run out in 2037 or something. The trust fund is in treasury bonds. That's them. They loan the money to themselves. And they can't pay on those trust funds unless they tax us or otherwise get the money to pay. If Bernie had written a nice agreement here and he said, I know I took the $50 billion, but don't worry, here's what I owe you for the $50 billion. He'd still be in jail. But this is what they did, all right? So these guys spent umpteen trillion dollars. They spent every cent actually buying votes and doing stuff we didn't need because they thought they'd keep in office. This is crazy. We have to elect people who won't do these things. And it's awful. We almost